Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Ink Studios. I'm your host Ink, and the piece that I am making in today's video is called Pain and Privilege, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. If I were to tell you guys all of the stuff that I had as a kid and the opportunities that I was given, you would assume that I led a very privileged life, and in a way I did. I can admit that. However, it is countered with a lot of really crappy stuff too. So, yes, I was a privileged kid who went through a lot of really crappy stuff. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. It's not really like a story time story, just a general analysis of a part of my childhood, I guess. So, starting off on my privileged side. Obviously I've posted the Disney World horror story, so vacations were not a foreign thing to me, at least on one side of my family. I guess I should explain that I had the unique opportunity of living on both sides of the proverbial tracks, I guess. My dad and his wife Vanessa had a lot of money, and my mom was very, very poor. So, as far as privilege goes, growing up at my dad's house, there were vacations. I was in 4th grade the first time that I left the country on vacation. We went on a cruise to Aruba, Costa Rica, Panama. We had our Disney World vacation. We traveled a lot. Hershey, Pennsylvania, whatever. Another benefit or privilege of growing up under my dad's wealth, if you will, was the amount of money that they put into giving me opportunities. Now, the opportunities that I speak of here are not things that I asked for or things that I wanted. I know I sound like an ungrateful child, but take this into consideration. Vanessa wanted me very, very much to be a girl. I was very, very much not a girly child. So, her putting me in years of gymnastics, where I ended up ultimately injuring myself pretty badly, and my coach ended up being a total creep, and years of modern jazz, which was never going to go anywhere because the only interest that I had shown in any kind of like real physical activity is I liked lifting weights, and I had inquired once or twice about getting into kickboxing or jujitsu, something that I felt was going to help me, to which the answer was, no, you're a girl. So I was given these quote-unquote opportunities to do girly things that I didn't want to do. I suppose the only thing that came from their monetary wealth that I can appreciate is my love for art. Vanessa saw that as a feminine quality, so I was supported in that. I got very expensive art supplies. I had a Wacom tablet at a young age. I got Copic markers and learned that technique rather early in life, I guess. So, in that sense, the money and the privilege worked out for me. However, on my mom's side, my privilege was different. I mean, my mom, as I said, was very, very poor, but she tried. I remember when I was first interested in like cosplay and I wanted to get a wig, I was talking to my mom about it, and she had said, well, let's go and get you one. And I'm like, nah, I don't want you to do that. You're broke. If I want it that badly, I will make it out to be I want to be a girl thing, and my stepmom will buy it for me. And she ended up being really upset that, what, I can't buy you things? Like offended almost. And I'm like, Mom, it's not personal. It's not like I don't want something from you or whatever. It's just that you don't have a lot of money, and I don't think that you should spend $40 on a wig that you can't afford. And I think the most significant thing that my mother did for me monetarily, as far as she was able, was I showed a heavy interest in making art a profession. And in my mom's social group, her personality, her life experience, the only way that she envisioned I would be able to make money with my artwork was if I became a tattoo artist. And I liked that idea. She bought me my very first tattoo kit when I was probably 13 and had me training underneath a tattoo artist at that time on and off for about a year and a half. So I actually had a tattoo kit and was giving people tattoos at 13, 14 years old because my mom wanted to support this thing that I wanted to do with my life. But the majority of the privilege, I guess you could say, that I got from growing up with my mom was what I feel is privilege, but may just be considered normal, I guess. I mean, I genuinely felt like she loved me, and I was really, really close and had a close family bond with her children, and those were the things that felt like privilege to me. And the fact that my mom completely accepted me the way that I was. I mean, she probably didn't love that I thought I was a guy. She definitely didn't have a problem with my sexuality. My mom plays both sides of the field, so that definitely wasn't going to bother her. But everything about who I was and who I wanted to be, she supported, which felt like privilege to me. It was the thing that I appreciated most in my childhood, was having someone who supported me the way that I was. And the first time that I wanted my hair dyed black because I was an emo kid, I mean, I would have been probably about 10 at this point. My mom got me a bottle of hair dye, and I'm like, no, Mom, I really want it, but my dad said that he would shave my head if I ever dyed my hair. And she's like, oh, he's bluffing, he wouldn't do that. So she dyed my hair black, and lo and behold, she dyed my hair. I went back to my dad's house, and they held me down, kicking, screaming, crying, and had a barber give me a buzz cut. You may be wondering, well, if you wanted to be a guy, why wouldn't you have wanted short hair? It's a difficult thing. Yes, I felt primarily masculine, but my entire life I had had long, flowing, thick hair, something that children tend to get attached to. I mean, I had a brother who didn't want his hair cut for years and years and years. His hair is all the way down to his ass right now. My nephew's the same way. He's 4, and he does not want his hair cut. He likes having his hair, so it's not a boy-girl thing. It's just an is thing. So being held down, crying, please no, don't, while having a barber shave off all of your hair is pretty traumatic. So this is our transition from privilege to pain. That was one of the incidences in my childhood where I don't think that that is a reasonable punishment for a child, to cut off all their hair. It's pretty fucked up. It doesn't sound like such a big deal if you're an adult, but if there are any women here listening with long, beautiful hair, I mean, how would you feel if one day someone just held you down and shaved your head? It feels violating. It's not a good thing. It's not something that parents should do to their kids, you know? Over some black hair dye. And yes, I was warned. But again, this was my mom telling me, he's bluffing, there's no way he'd do it. And I don't even think that it was about me. I think it was more about sticking it to her. Which, again, the mental warfare that my parents played on each other through me was borderline abusive in and of itself. So we'll start again on my dad's side. I actually made myself a little like Venn diagram here to try and keep track of the abuse neglect factor of my childhood. Starting with my dad's side. Vanessa had me working 8-hour shifts of quote unquote, air quotes, volunteer work at a local organic food co-op. 8-hour shifts as a kid. I mean, this was going into 7th and 8th grade, so I was 11, 12 years old, working 8-hour shifts at a grocery store so that she could get discounts on her food, which I say volunteer in air quotes so heavily right now because I did not volunteer. I did not want to take 8 hours out of my day to do heavy lifting at a grocery store so that they could get discounts on food, half of which I wasn't even allowed to touch. So, if you want to talk about, oh, well, it builds character. Yeah, it sure does. And by the time that I was 16, I was working a full-time job that I was getting paid for, and I agree it totally had an effect on my future work ethic, because being forced to work hard work that people normally get paid for throughout your childhood does improve that. But that doesn't change the fact that, guys, there are better ways to teach your kids about good work ethic than forcing them to do actual jobs in actual job shifts to get you discounts on stuff that you want. Like, I always pushed, child labor laws and whatever. So, again, not necessarily abuse, neglect, just questionable. Now, as far as the neglect goes, I remember my dad telling me when I was very young, not out of anger, not out of frustration, just in a sad, defeated kind of tone, "I'm sorry, kid, I just don't know how to love you." And my response to him was, "It's okay, it's mutual, I don't love you either," And I had known growing up that my dad did not take custody of me because that is what he wanted. If he had not met Vanessa, I would have grown up with my mom. I ended up living with my dad, not even, I think, because Vanessa wanted me, but because she didn't want my mom to have me. And whether or not I feel this way because this is what I was told growing up, or because it's true, I really feel that how I was treated in that household growing up promotes the fact that they didn't want me there, they just didn't want my mom to have me. It was a game, it was mental warfare, they were gonna win. And I don't think that my dad really cared either way. And it really didn't hurt my feelings when he told me that, because I really didn't love him. I did not have a relationship with this guy like that. Me and my dad didn't end up loving each other and getting close to each other until after I turned 18 and moved out. But my dad not being the most communicative of people, it wasn't a subject I was going to press. And wasn't going to press it not even because I was sad, but there was from time to time a moment where I was curious as to why he didn't love me. So one day, Vanessa being someone who was more communicative, I remember asking her, again, at a young age, "Why is it that Dad loves you more than he loves me?" Just out of curiosity, wondering what this woman had that I didn't. And her very matter-of-fact response to me was, "Well, men are supposed to love their wives more than anyone in the world." Which, even when I was a kid, didn't make sense to me, because my assumption in life, selfishly, was that you're supposed to love your children more than anybody in the world. And as an adult, I still firmly believe that. That was not me being a selfish child. That's just something that makes sense. You should love your children more than you love anyone else in the world. And I firmly believe that. So, for her to just matter-of-factly say, "Oh, well, men are supposed to love their wives more than they love their kids," I think it's a load of crap, honestly. So, and as I mentioned in my previous video, a couple of previous videos probably, Vanessa and I butted heads constantly about everything about my personality. In the way that I said that my mom accepted everything about me, Vanessa fought everything about me. My sexuality, my religion, my gender identity, everything that I was, everything that was important to me was a problem. And I was fought on it all of the time. And I had no privacy. I could not have anything regarding my religion or my sexuality in my home. There was no space in that house that was mine. And yes, I understand that if you think that your kids are doing something dangerous, you have every right to go through their room. But it wasn't like that. I was not allowed to have magazine clippings of Victoria's Secret models or anything. My room was regularly gone through. There was no space that felt like mine, and I cannot express to you guys, those of you who may not remember being a teenager, how much it is important for a child to feel like they have a safe space. I had no safe space in that home. It was never my home. I never felt at home there. I mean, I lived there on and off up until I turned 18, and I never felt at home there. I never felt like I had a safe place there at all. And in my That One Time I Died video, I talk about the medication. In the beginning, I can understand that if your kid is hurting themselves, you don't know what else to do but listen to a doctor who's supposed to know what to do. But there comes a point, if your child is suffering so many horrible side effects, that you pay attention to that. They had a preference. They would rather have a doped up kid who couldn't function or see straight or walk straight than an opinionated child who had a personality. So, in the beginning, I can excuse that. Going forward, with all of the side effects and the pain and the obvious abuse of that medication on the doctor's part, there should have been a point in time where they stepped up and took me off of it or said something, because what they allowed with that medication I do consider abuse. And you can think that that's an over-exaggeration all you'd like, but it did end up stopping my heart. It ended up killing me because of how much medication I was on. And it didn't happen all of a sudden. This happened gradually over time, and it should have been stopped. I would never ever allow someone to dope my kid up so bad that all of their bodily functions just stopped working. Parents are supposed to pay attention to these things, and they didn't. And, it's funny. I was not a terrible kid. I mean, if you watch Dr. Phil, you know what a terrible kid is. I wasn't even close to that. I remember Vanessa trying to put me on a PINS petition, and this PINS officer came to our house and was talking to her about what it was that I was doing wrong. And she's like, well, we don't like her attitude. And he stared at her like she was stupid or something and said, we don't put kids on PINS petitions because you don't like their attitude. And she's like, well, she argues with us. Well, lady, all kids argue with their parents. What's she actually doing? And they couldn't come up with a damn thing because I wasn't doing a damn thing. So they ended up blowing her off, and that didn't happen. And when that didn't work out, they attempted to send me to a Christian boot camp that was out of state, at which point I called my mom and she saved me. And these are just the tips of the iceberg as far as less abuse and more neglect. Just the fact that I was completely unloved and mistreated and walked all over. I mean, I went through some really terrible things at my mom's house too, but I would have always preferred being with my mom because the emotional turmoil that I suffered at my dad's house is something that I would never, ever, ever put myself through again. People say all the time, oh, what I wouldn't give to be 18 again. Let me tell you, man, you could not pay me $100 million to live a year in my teenage life. I wouldn't take it because it was terrible. So, transitioning over to the actual abuse of what happened at my mom's house. Her boyfriend, and she was in a relationship with this guy for 17 years from the time that I was 2. Add 17 years. And we will call him Freddie, and he was very, very physically abusive. He broke my mom's jaw. He almost broke my sister's leg and almost killed her on more than one occasion. My brother, Nigma, has autism. And I remember with autism, sometimes you have sensory issues, so loud noises can really screw them up. And Freddie had installed surround sound around the living room and would blast really loud, harsh music. So one day, Nigma, who was a small child at this point, went and took scissors and snipped the cords to the surround sound, and Freddie left a bruise on this kid's back the size of a football that reached from one side of his ribs all the way to the other side. And CPS was always involved, and everyone was always too scared to talk. And on the occasions when I got older and started talking or physically defending them, that was when I would get kicked out. My mom loved me for every piece of me that I was, except for the piece that wanted to protect them from this guy that she loved. And I went through some really, really scary, abusive stuff when I was very, very young that I'm not going to talk about in this video specifically. But looking back, growing up, I had always assumed that there was no way that my mom knew that this was going on, because she would have put a stop to it. And this wasn't Freddie, by the way, if you're wondering. This was somebody else that was close to my mom that she loved. And I just assumed growing up, because I was naive, that there was no way that my mom knew about it. But looking back as an adult, I can see so many red flags that it's impossible for me to believe that she never had an inkling. And if you have an inkling that something like this is happening to your kids and you don't do anything, there are no words. I still love my mom, and I'm still never going to be able to get over the fact that there's no way she didn't know, and she didn't do anything. I mean, when your school is 5 minutes away and this person takes your very small child to school half an hour early every day, and your kid is still half an hour late to school, that's 5 minutes away every day, and your kid has the issues that they have that are related to this type of abuse, how do you not say anything? And everyone probably thinks that this, obviously you should hate your mom, or you should at least have felt like you liked being there less. But no, keep in mind the privilege aspect of this. My dad and Vanessa may have had money, but my mom treated me like she loved me. And even turning a blind eye to something like that doesn't blot out the fact that I had one adult in my life who treated me like she loved me, and that was my mom. And because she loved me, anything that she did was forgivable. So, growing up, I would rather have been in a house where I was fist fighting a full-grown man in defense of my family. I would have rather grown up in a house with someone who turned a blind eye to horrific types of abuse on her child because she loved me. As far as the neglect goes, there was a point in our childhoods where my mom did concerts, setting up for them or whatever, or where she just partied a lot, and she'd be gone for days at a time, and we would be home with no food and no money. I mean, I could tell you guys the onion pie story. We had nothing left in the house, and the kids were hungry, and I was hungry, and looking through everything that we had a little bag of old flour, some half-rotten onions, and a really old can of Parmesan cheese. And I mixed up the flour with water, and I cut up the onions and fried them on the stove, and I put the onions in the dough that I had made with some Parmesan cheese and stuck it in the oven, and I made onion pie. And the kids loved it. They were so ecstatic. It was like they were not eating the very last of the scraps that we had just found around the house. And for years to come, out of nowhere, they would just be like, hey, why don't we have onion pie? And while I can tell that story with a smile on my face, it's really sad. We would dig for change underneath the couch cushions to walk to our corner store and get granola bars because it was all that we could afford. I would go days without eating anything because I wanted them to have enough to keep going. It was really, really scary up until I got my first job and started buying food. And when I had my first apartment, I was spending $200 a week in groceries to send back with them, because if I didn't send them food, they were not going to have any. Fortunately, they were all in school at that point in time, so at least 5 days a week they got lunch, which was, a benefit, of course. So, this is my life story of my privilege and my pain. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of aspects of both, but we're getting on in the story right now, so we're gonna leave it at that. And I will hope you guys enjoyed my painting, and I hope you guys enjoyed my story, if you will, and I will see you guys in the next one.